Hi everyone. Have you ever been struggling with a situation where you feel like you've absorbed some negative energy from somebody? As an empath, this is pretty easy to do, right? Especially if you're in a challenging situation and there's somebody who is quite narcissistic, and what happens is we forget to shield and we end up getting quite drained. Now, I just wanted to share a little bit about narcissists and empaths here. Both narcissists and empaths actually use energy manipulation tactics to get energy. And the tactics that they employ are very different from each other. Now, what we actually want is to be grounded and centered. We want to come into alignment. We want to be so much in alignment that God can flow through us. Source energy can flow through us. And what this means is we don't want to actually be in either polarity. We don't want to be a narcissist, somebody who takes. But equally, we don't want to be an empath in our wound. It's great to be compassionate. It's great to be able to sense what others are feeling. But we do need to delineate. We do need to have some boundaries, because on this earthly plane, we are actually here to learn. We are here as a soul of light, an individual spark of God consciousness, to learn. And in order to learn, we actually do need to separate ourselves out from other people's energy. And as an empath, when you're very aware of other people's energy, we actually have difficulty in separating ourselves out from other people's energy. And this can leave us open to all sorts of problems. So perhaps you've been in an experience, you've experienced something where a narcissist has drained you of energy. Okay, this is something that commonly happens, obviously. And the reason for this is the narcissist actually doesn't know how to get energy any other way. They have so many traumas and things that they haven't worked through, so many blocks, that their connection to God, to source energy, is quite constricted. And so when they become low on energy, they will go for any energy source that's around, and that normally is an empath. Okay, somebody who is unguarded in their energy, whose boundaries are down, and who can feel the energy of the narcissist. The narcissist will go after them as easy prey. Now, another problem with a narcissist that you may find is that because they are very unaware of how energy operates, they actually have low self-awareness, and they're not very good at working through traumas and releasing blockages, and they're also not very good at actually managing their own energy. Because if they were, they would be releasing traumas daily, they would be clearing that trauma out, and they would have a more free-flowing connection to God and to Source, right? So when a narcissist struggles with a difficult emotion, what tends to happen is they're unsure how to process this emotion. They don't know how to release it. And so if there's an empath around, what you'll find is that they will actually, when faced with this difficult emotion, they will project it onto you. And it's actually almost like they will vomit it onto you. And as the empath, because you're open, you will absorb that. You will absorb that difficult emotion. And the reason for this is energy can actually only attach to like energy. So if an empath has some sort of a wound, just even the tiniest little bit of a residue energy that they are still working through and haven't yet released, and the narcissist is projecting out this energy, a like energy. Let's say, for instance, if you have a lot of self-judgment, as an empath, if you are still self-critical and there's things that you haven't forgiven yourself for, or you hold yourself to very high standard and you're not quite reaching it and you have guilt around that, that's judgment. You have judgment within you, within your field. And when the narcissist has this difficult emotion that they're not sure how to process, what they'll do is they'll project it outwards. They'll actually vomit it out, and what will happen is all of that vomited rage, judgment, anger, the empath will then take into their field because they have a grain of it within them still. So the like energy floods in and attaches to this tiny little seed of that energy that you have within you. And so suddenly all of this rage and anger and judgment and blame and guilt and shame coming from the other person, coming from the narcissist who's not processing their own emotions, will be sucked in and attached to the empath's grain of energy. And so this is what happens very often when we're triggered. And I'm using judgment as an example. And I'd like to give you a little example from my own life, something that happened to me today. So I have a history of low self-worth, right? I have a history of being very judgmental of myself, of holding myself to standards of perfection, of always having low self-worth and trying to gain my worth by my deeds, right? So I have a tiny grain of this still in my body that I'm dealing with, and I've been healing this for a long time. But what happened today was I had just come back from taking my daughter to an excursion, and I'd been away for a few days, and it had been a long trip and we were still unpacking and everything, and I got up in the morning and the house was in a bit of a state, but I always get up at 6 o'clock and I worked to remedy the situation, and I made the school lunches and I cooked the breakfasts and I did the medicines and the supplements and the herbs, and I started tidying up. And the night before, even though I was tired, I'd done an emergency dash to the shops and I'd bought a whole lot of food because we'd used it all up. I needed stuff for school lunches, right? And instead of cleaning the fridge out, now I'd been away for a few days, so there were things in the fridge that needed to go. And instead of cleaning them out, because I was so tired, I was kind of coming down with the cold, so I just dumped all the shopping that I'd bought into the fridge. And I have the narcissist in my the narcissist in my history is a family member, right? And they are staying with me at the moment. And of course, first thing in the morning, after me working for 3 hours, this person comes in and opens the fridge and says, "This fridge is dirty, it's disgusting. How can you live like this?" And this sort of thing. And immediately I felt this influx of rage and anger, judgment, and I got so riled up and I thought, what the hell is going on here? And I had to sort of step back, and firstly I tried defending myself, right? I was like, well, I've been away for 3 days and I can't do everything. I can't literally be in 2 places at one time. And then I thought, what am I doing? And I walked away from the situation, and then I had to think about it. And I called in assistance from the angels, and I asked them to explain to me what was going on. And this is where they told me, they explained that tiny grain of self-critical judgment that I have within me had then been the little magnetic point of attraction that had allowed all of this judgment and blame and guilt and shame that had been vomited out onto me to attach to me. And I could actually feel it in my body. I could feel this intense rush of energy. Like when you're really angry, you can feel that, right? Feels like you're the electric, like you've got this extra voltage of energy. And what I realized was I'd absorbed all this negative energy, okay? And I also realized the reason why. Because this person was so unaware of their own energy. They didn't know how to process their emotions. Now, emotions are energy in motion, okay? And when it builds up, this uncomfortable energy within this person they weren't sure what to do with, they decided they would just make me take it. And being an empath, I did. My defenses were down. I was not shielded. I was too tired. I wasn't feeling well. And so I fell into this familiar pattern, this trap. And it's wonderfully empowering, actually, to really realize what's going on. And it's actually also very liberating. And so I knew all I needed to do was to release this energy, this stuck energy. And so I did that. I actually could also feel very much that it was in my throat. Whenever I get really angry, I can feel like I'm being strangled, like there's a lump in my throat. That anger is a lump in my throat. And so what I did was I focused on clearing that with energy and with light. And when I released that energy, I was able to go back inside, and I was perfectly composed and relaxed. And what immediately happened was this person came to me and said, I'm sorry for judging you. I'm sorry for criticizing you about the fridge. And the amazing thing was that they actually admitted that they had felt really guilty because yesterday they'd seen the fridge was dirty and they'd wanted to clean it, but they'd felt too tired. And so this uncomfortable feeling that they had of feeling guilty, feeling ashamed, feeling perhaps not good enough, they then didn't know what to do with it. And so they turned that around and they vomited it out onto me to get rid of it. Okay? Now they felt great, but I was left not feeling good because I took their energy on. And so the lesson here is really to always to consider what's happening in your life, right? To have a look and say, hang on a minute, okay, so what's going on in this situation? Because if I'm getting riled up by this, there must be a grain of that energy that they're projecting onto me, within me, for it to attach to. And so every interaction that you have can be a clue to your own healing, and it can be an opportunity for you to do healing. Now, if you're interested in hearing more about healing trauma and low self-worth, please join me at www.theflamekeeper.com.au. I am a spiritual coach, an energy healer, and a medical medium practitioner. My name is Nicolene, and I am the Flamekeeper. Thank you so much for being here. Lots of love.